Good evening, everybody, once again, and welcome to our session this evening. I have not had a look at all the submissions yet, and I will have a look at it by the end of this week, and then it normally gets checked, and then it sort of gets released on next week Friday. So please keep an eye out for the results. Just staying on the assessment, and I would like you guys to give me some feedback on it. Just please, we can maybe just spend some time on that now very quickly. Was there anything that I could have done differently to better prepare you for the assignment? So that's a loaded question. Is there anything that you think we should have done, we as being a class together, that we should have done on the assignment to better prepare you for it? Let me ask you in that way. Please.
From
yes. Yeah. Go for it, Rana.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying from my side, I don't think you could have better prepared us. I think we were pretty prepared for the assignment and what was to come.
Okay. All right. No, thank you for that feedback.
I'm the same. I agree with Ruana. So I think the depth in which you tackle the content and explained everything, and then the conversations we had in class to kind of reinstate our particular ideas on the particular things really helped. So thank you.
Okay. No, good. Thank you for that feedback.
Yeah, I chime in with Ruana and Andrew. I think for me on my side, it was just the burden, or for lack of a better word, of the fact that all of my subjects or all of my modules were on the same day.
All due at the same time.
So yes. It was kind of overwhelming for me, but other than that, you did prepare us. It's just maybe it was just packed all in one day for me personally.
Yeah. No, I think for quite a few of you, you had, because assessment 1 tends to be due on a Monday at the start of week 7. Assessment 1 for most of the term 2 courses. Some were due, I think, last week Monday, but a lot of them were due like this Monday past. All right. So, and I also, most of you being sort of more seasoned students, sort of second year, my expectation is to do less hand-holding, but more sort of give you a broader scope. And when I do mark, as I said to you in my preparation for the assessment, when I do mark, my expectation is to see you wrestle with the concepts, not just to tell me here it is, but to say here it is, but here is an alternative, or here's something else, or here's a different view, and here's the research that backs it up. So I want to see that wrestling with the concepts other than just here it is, because that demonstrates that you're critically looking at it. You're sort of looking at it, reviewing it, and going, yes, it can work, but maybe not in this context, because once again, like all management concepts, whether it is human resources, operational, supply chain, not so much supply chain or operations, because those sort of business functions or those sort of study areas, they are a lot more scientifically based. Things like operations, things like supply chain, things like information systems. But when you get to the more social science based sort of business functions, human resource management, business strategy, business management, when you get to those areas, it becomes a lot more the theories that we have and the frameworks that we have, they tend to be more, in most cases, this will work mostly. But contexts are so different, whether it is different cultural context, whether it is different generational context, whether it is different culture, generally, generational cultural context, they all sort of throw a lot of these theories and frameworks sort of awry, so to speak. And then it becomes a case of, okay, is it applicable? Is it not applicable? Can it work? Does it have to be tweaked? Does it have to be changed? So given that, make sure that when you wrestle with these concepts, especially in your major subjects like in human resource management, which is more of an organizational psychology sort of type frameworks, and you look at and these theories that say this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yes, it is, but it might not work in this context, or it can work in this context, but it needs to be changed or maybe reinterpreted for that particular context. So I'm quite excited for tonight's session. We're going to be talking about recruitment and selection, which is very interesting, especially considering what we've done before. So what we've done before is it's all about the people already in the organization. Recruitment and selection is that key part of human resource management, the human resource management function, which if done properly, then a lot of downstream things, issues around conflict, issues around organizational fit, issues around poor performance, issues around absenteeism, issues around turnover, can and will be avoided. So think of this as the door. This is about letting the right people on the bus in order to achieve the organizational objective, which is the destination where the bus is going. And if you don't have the right people on the bus, then you'll have that internal conflict and that friction, which leads to things like absenteeism, things like poor performance, things like conflict, things like, higher turnover. And remember, every time you bring in someone into the organization, it takes about 6 months for that person to start working at an optimal level, which means they now know where the toilets are. They now know what they need to do. They're comfortable in their job. And then another 6 months in which they start performing their job up to the level which is expected of them. And then another 12 months after that for them to start exceeding their performance. So that's 2 years, 2 years of investment. 6 months just to know where the toilets are, another 6 months just to know what you're supposed to be doing and just doing your job up to a standard. And then another 12 months after that, just to start performing, because now they know their job, they know where the bathroom are, they know what is expected of them, and now they start exceeding their performance. So that's 2 year investment. And if you don't have the right person, that's 2 years or even 6 months or even 12 months, which is wasted, which is investment of time, investment of financial investment in that person's salary, which potentially can needs to be written off, especially if that person needs to be moved out of the business or it's not a very good organizational fit. So fit, or what we call organizational fit, is so important. But it starts off with attracting the right people. And that is where recruitment comes in. If you're not attracting the right people, then you don't have the right pool to choose from. So it starts with attracting the right people. The best way of attracting the right people is through understanding and knowing what you stand for as a business, your values, what the business's purpose is, the way you communicate that. If you don't communicate who the business and what the business is, its higher purpose, its values, what it stands for, then you're not going to attract the right people. And if you don't attract the right people, then you don't have a pool of people that you can select from. And if you only attract a certain amount of people or a certain pool of people, then you're going to pick, sometimes you call it the cleanest dirty shirt in the laundry basket. So you'll end up with a pool of people where they're not the greatest. And you're sort of trying to pick the best one out of that group. And once you start there, then you're really on the back foot. And then you have to train them up, you have to move them into the organization, and then it just becomes quite a difficult and a challenging thing with them. Andrew.
So I was going to say, it's like, what happens in the case of like, so this person is experienced, you've picked them, and they've run a business before, they've run a particular department within businesses, and then you put them in there, and they complete and utterly flop like nobody's business whilst doing that thing. And then obviously you put in things in place to make sure that they succeed or whatever, but they just can't. And then you've got off the back of that people leaving because of poor leadership. So how do you go about dealing with things like that, and how do you go about fixing or potentially fixing things like that?
Yeah. You make sure they never enter the business, and you make sure you never.
No, but like
they never enter it, and that is where recruitment comes in. That is where the pool of people that you select from is the right pool, and the only way you can get the right pool of people that you can select from is by selling the opportunity, selling the organization in such a way that you attract the right people. But I can tell you this much, is that you can do everything right. You can dot the I's, you can cross the T's, that person can do very well in an interview. They do all the psychometric assessments. They go through the first interview, the second interview, they go through a case study, they present it, and they shine. They look like superstars. And then you now this is where the selection process is so important. Because part of the selection process is about weeding out, because some people are good at interview. Some people are good at showing a good picture. This is who I am, and they're very good at that. Because again, if you're wanting a job, you'll put your best foot forward. And if somebody asks you, how did you deal with conflict? You're not going to say, well, I fired their ass. You're going to say, well, I work with them very closely in order to resolve the conflict, blah, blah, blah. And you say all the right things. So interviews are the place, the selection process is the place where, if done right, you'll weed out the poor candidates, even though they look good on paper, even though they come across as being superstars, you'll weed them out and you'll pick those gems out of those. And that is so important in the selection process.
Okay.
But I can tell you now already, they still slip through. And
yeah, they do. But it's like, there is no particular way to mitigate that, right?
You've got that is why the 3 months are so golden. The 3-month trial period, the 3-month trial period is so golden. And especially in senior positions, that's the golden period, because in that period of time, both of you is like this extended, it's like the interview is finished, but now the extended interview process starts. Now for 3 months, I'm going to watch you and keep a close eye on you. And if there's any red flags, then if the company is good at that process, they'll call the person in and say, listen, you've been here for 3 months. We thought you were going to do this, but, it's not going so well. And I don't think this is a good fit for you. And you write that in the contract. You make sure that that 3-month trial period is such an important part of that process.
Okay. Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah. But again, people slip through, and once they're in the business, then good luck.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So we've covered off motivation, why people and what drives people. We covered off wellness. We've covered off employee relations, which is the rules of the road. We've covered off organizational planning, or HR planning, which was last week. Sorry, I couldn't have our online session. And so now we're moving on to this important part, which is about getting the right people in your organization. So recruitment is the marketing part of it. This is who we are. This is our company. Come and work for us. We're a great company to work for. This is what we stand for. These are our values. And if you do that well, if you do that part well, then you'll always have a good pool of people that you can draw from and select from. Selection is once you have that pool of people, your pool of candidates, you now need to have a very robust selection process to ensure that you're picking out of that pool the right person or the best candidate out of that pool. So those are the two parts of it. And there's always this push and pull between the HR department, which looks after the process, and the person that sort of is the direct, that's the customer, so to speak. So the line manager would be the customer or the client. Remember, we spoke about business partner. So they'll be the internal business partner. They'll say, the marketing manager will say, I need a new brand manager, and they need to have this and this and this. This is the brand manager role. This is the amount of experience, etc., etc. Now, they've got ideas about the type of person that they're looking for. But the guardian of the process is HR, because they need to go and find that person. They need to go and find that person. And as HR, your role isn't just about finding the right person for the marketing manager. Your role is to find the right person for the marketing manager as a brand manager. That's the role you're looking for. But also a person that's going to be a brand manager is going to fit into the organization as a whole. You're looking for a person that can potentially also become a marketing manager in a few years from now. So you're looking for potential. So when you're searching for someone, when you're searching for a candidate, it's not just the marketing manager, which is your internal customer or client, would just say, I'm looking for this and this and this, don't find me somebody. It's more of a partnership to say that, listen, together, we look at your criteria that you're looking for, but we're also looking for a person that can become part of our talent pool, a person that can become part of our talent pipeline, a person that ultimately would be able to be promoted in the future. The manager's role, as O'Leary makes clear, is a disengaged manager can ruin the entire process. So a person that says, oh, I've got a vacancy, go and find me somebody, and they just sit back and they just, when they have the screening interviews and the person says, I'm the HR manager, thank you for coming to the interview, and this is the line manager, which is the marketing manager for the role, tell us a bit more about yourself. And then the marketing manager sort of just sits there and they sort of completely disengage. And if that's the case, then you won't find the right person, because remember, the candidate that's walking in, they're looking at their future boss sitting across the table from them. And if their future boss don't show any interest in them, then they go, well, I don't want to work for this company, because I don't want to work for that guy. Look at him. He's sitting there with his arms crossed and he's, all dour and sour. He doesn't want to be there because he thinks it's a waste of time. He's just like, this is HR job. It's not my job to sit in interviews. The line manager's role is to be that ambassador. It's about building rapport and connection. It's about asking the right questions, because remember, they're looking, again, if we use the marketing manager and the brand manager role that we're filling as an example, they're looking at the person that's a good fit. Do they have the technical skills? Do they have the ability to work with not just me, but also the rest of the team, because they know the rest of the team. And unprepared managers is the number one reason that great candidates walk away, because they'll turn to the manager, so tell me a bit more about the job. And they go, well, brand manager for a new brand that we're launching next week, next month, blah, blah. And then they go, oh, I don't want to work for a company like this. I don't want to work for that guy. So it's important that this partnership, again, a partnership between the HR function, which is filling the role, and finding the right candidates, and the line manager, which is the internal client that is looking to have that role filled, that relationship is good and they're both speaking off the same page. So recruitment and selection is this process of getting, and again, I'm talking about a pool. It's getting the right pool. if you don't have the right pool, you're going to end up choosing the best out of a weak pool of candidates. So it's like a funnel. It's about getting the best people, attracting them. So it's about marketing, screening them, making sure you weed out those ones that's not great, and then drawing up a short list. And then the final part is the selection process. Now, let me talk about AI, because you know that AI is involved in everything and algorithms. So AI is being used now more than ever. And I want to specifically talk to you guys, which is on social media, that's sort of active and so forth. So there are now AI tools, AI-based tools and algorithmic tools that companies are using to help with the selection process, because help with the shortlisting process and the screening process. Because the screening process is the most boring ever. It is the most time-consuming, because you have to sit there. Imagine you've got a position and you get 1,000 CVs, and you have to go through each one of those CVs and you have to read through it. So they're using algorithms, they're using AI, they're using software to screen the CVs and to bring it down to maybe a more manageable list. They go from 1,000 to maybe 25 or 50, and then the 50 gets human eyes on it. So what they tend to do nowadays is, especially now, is that they use all kinds of screening tools that builds up a profile for you. So it looks at your social media, it looks at what you're posting, it looks at your activity on social media, and it builds up in your online personality and your online sort of persona, and it takes that with your CV, and it sort of looks and starts building up a personal profile based on what you're posting, based on how you're interacting, and even go so far as to see who you're posting and who your friends are on social media, to sort of build up a profile. And then that profile is given a score, and then that score is matched to the position. So just be careful, please. Just be careful in terms of how you present yourself online, because again, in a year's time and 2 years' time, these tools are going to become more ubiquitous than ever before. At the moment, it's still being used, not in a lot of cases, because companies don't want to talk about it. Because especially in South Africa, if a company is found out that they use software and algorithms to not select a person, it's in that area of legislation, and companies are sort of operating in that gray, because if there's 5 of you in the team of a medium-sized company, there's 5 of you, you just receive 150 applications via LinkedIn, you've got another 50 via Indeed, you've got another 100 via a different company, then you can't physically go through it. So what companies tend to do is they tend to use recruitment companies, but that comes at a cost, because recruitment companies charge upwards of 25 to 30% of the person's annual salary as a fee for finding the right candidate. So what recruitment companies do is that they would get a pool of candidates of 500, and they then use, so recruitment companies are the biggest users of these software and tools and algorithms in order to build a profile of a person, in order to match them to a position. Because again, a recruitment company do not have the manpower to go through 500 CVs. So they do use software to match and screen and build up a person's profile in order to match them best, to do the best match. So when they give to a client, they then go to a client, because remember, for them, it's about finding the best possible short list of candidates so that they can get paid. So they will present to the client the best possible 5 names or 10 names that, based on their algorithms, based on the software that they're using, based on the profiles that they've built for candidates. So just be aware that this is something that is happening. and it will become more ubiquitous or more used more often with the rise with the use of AI software tools as well. So that's the process. It's a funding process, but it starts off first with knowing what the job is. So it starts off with the job description. Let's go back to our brand manager again. So the brand manager, it's based on a specific job description. This is what they're doing, but it's not just a list of tasks, not just these are the things that they're doing. It's also about why they're doing it. It's also about the type of person you're looking for. It's also about potential growth in the role. It's also about aligning with the company's values. So all of those things are part of, remember, if the advert that you're posting, and we'll come to the discussion for this week, because the discussion for this week is an interesting task that I've set for you. If the advert is the only thing that that person knows about the company, then that advert have to be pretty good to convince somebody to click on it and go, I've got a decent job at the moment. I'm earning well, but wow, look at that job. Click. Let me apply because that job sounds great. Because remember, in terms of the pool of candidates that you want a pool of candidates of people that have jobs at the moment, that is happy in their jobs, but they're willing to leave it because you're offering something better for them. What you don't want is people that are unemployed, that left their jobs because they were unhappy, and they left their job because of other reasons, maybe due to poor performance or for whatever reason, it wasn't a good fit. Now they're really sitting at home and they've already done 15 different applications. And by the time they get to your job application, it's just another application. That is not the person that you're looking for. Because by that time, that person is desperate and they'll say yes to everything, to anything that you're offering them. And you don't want a person that is desperate in that pool that you're going to select from. Yes, Andrew?
So when I was part of our HR team at the company I worked for, and we did all of these things in HR, like interviewing and whatever, I remember vividly that there was this one lady, right? Because you use LexisNexis as a criminal record checking system. Just in case, as a backup thing for your employee, right? And I remember there was this one lady that her CV looked okay. She interviewed moderately okay, but she had an adverse knowledge on a particular topic, right? So in my eyes, her knowledge outweighed all of the things that came through. However, I don't know why she had to throw herself under the bus, but she was like, I don't know if this will play a big factor, but I was an addict 20 years ago, and I don't know whether that will come up or not. So you check LexisNexis, and it's like, okay, cool. This has come up, and we're like, we can't allow this to happen. And the thing is like, I don't know for you, so how it would have felt if you were in HR, but for me, it felt like I'm in a position now where I feel bad for the person, because it's like I want to give him a job, and she was unemployed at the time, because she's smart. It's not like she's not. But due to something out of my control being said, she doesn't have a job now. So it's like, that's my thing, is how do you kind of combat those things, or like kind of not force people, but like guide people.
How do you leave your heart in the parking lot?
Yeah, I can't, I can't as a human with morals, I can't,
Andrew, that's such a good question. And it's let me just pause here. It sort of goes to the heart of human resource management. Anyone that chooses this role, and you're bringing up such a good point, anyone that chooses this career path needs to understand that tension, needs to understand that dichotomy, that heart-wrenching moment in which you sit sitting across the way from someone. They've just, they've just become a dad. Where you have a Tando, I see your name, your hand up. Where you sitting. I mean, I always use this example for when we talk about ethics within HR. You've got a code of conduct. This person, his wife, so the code of conduct says, as a driver, you're not to use the company vehicle for any personal use, and you sign it, and they sign it, and they agree to it. They out on a delivery, and during the day, their wife calls them and says, "Listen, I've just gone into labor, and I'm bleeding," and they rush home with the vehicle, and they take the wife to the doctor, and the baby is saved. But you still have to fire them, because they use the vehicle for personal use. Now, there is mitigating circumstances, so they can appeal it, but that's the code of conduct that they sign. And it's heart-wrenching, because as an HR manager, you're there to enforce compliance, and it sounds like you're a police officer, but that's exactly what it is. You're there to enforce compliance, and you're there to protect the reputation and the good name of the company, not the people within the company. And that is the role, that is the job. It is a difficult, and if you go into it with your eyes wide open, and you know that it's going to, you're going to have to walk a tight line between your own personal feelings and what is good for the company, and how to protect the company, because ultimately you're there to protect the company. And that's your job. That's what you get paid to do. And sometimes it requires you to put your feelings in a box and go to the letter of the law and say, this is what the law says, and I have to abide by it. But thank you very much for that question. It's such a good one. Anduwazi?
Thank you, sir. So, you mentioned something about how when you're in HR, you'd like to attract people that are employed, but would like, to offer value elsewhere, right? So I've been seeing, these videos going around of how you should never mention to HR that you're unemployed, because they will not hire you, and most likely will, no matter how qualified you are, but most likely they will not view you as a valid candidate. So you mentioning that sort of like gave me that picture that being unemployed sends a picture that you're desperate. But at the same time, I'd like to know, I mean, I understand that you want a person that wants the job for the job, not because they are desperate for the job, but how does HR, or how as a candidate do you portray yourself or display yourself as someone that is, increase your chances of getting a job even though you're unemployed, and not seem desperate, or sort of like mitigate the desperate misconception that HR people have? Because I think it's quite an unfair assessment to make, although I understand it's, it is the market, but it's quite unfair that you would have to be assessed based on your employment status rather than your qualification and zeal for the job.
That's such a good point. If from a candidate perspective, I would always say that you say, I'm currently on a sabbatical, I'm busy improving myself, I'm busy working on certain aspects and studying further. I'm doing an online course and this and this and this, and you make sure that you get proof to prove it. But that's what I would tell anybody that's sort of left the position, to say that you can't just sit around idle. Do something while you're at home, do an online course, even if it's for free, even if it's a free course that you're busy studying and you're busy researching, that type of thing. So you can say, listen, I left my job 3 months ago, and I'm busy improving my skills in these areas. So that's one way of mitigating it. You can also say that I left to take care of relatives that needed taking care of. But again, you need to prove that. So don't say stuff just to not to seem desperate and unemployed. But it is unfortunately the case, Dandu, that as a HR, you put yourself in the position of the person that needs to, that they get these 15 names from the recruitment agency. And out of those 15 names, there's 5 of them that have been at home for the last 6 months. And you have to ask yourself, why have they been at home for the last 6 months? Have they not been able to secure a job? And the question is, why have they not been able to secure a job in 6 months? But your recruitment agency will do that screening for you. So the recruitment agency will say, listen, this person has been at home for 6 months, but they've been doing this and this and this. Or this person has been at home for 12 months, but they've been doing this and this and this while they've been at home. If you don't make use of a recruitment agency, then you can ask that as part of your screening questions. If you've not been employed in the last 6 months, tell us what you have been doing and why. And if you have been actively looking for work for the last 6 months, so you can find ways of screening people to find out, if they have been unemployed, what have they been up to, what have they been doing. But I can tell you a red flag is if a person has been at home for 6 months, they've gone to numerous interviews, and they have not been employed. That's a red flag. You have to ask yourself why. Because remember, they've gone through this process where somebody has checked them, where somebody has screened them, and they haven't been able to secure a job. That's a red flag. Make sense? I had a Zukani, you've got a question?
It's not necessarily a question. I think what Tando mentioned hit home because, you can be a student, you can do maybe part-time things here and there, but you sit at home for more than 6 months, and I feel like the expectation from the HR department or from the companies is so high, but the reality is different. There's just no comparing the two, and I feel like it's gonna be harder for companies to find the candidates they're looking for because most of them have probably been sitting at home for longer than that and probably are not even pursuing this particular path of career. They're trying to hustle something else so that they can at least get something to pay the rent. Yeah, and it's just, I feel like it's unrealistic, especially with the rules and regulations. It's like they're putting it in a perfect world, but in reality, it's just you can't compare the two.
It's a difficult thing, and that's why job searching is such an important part. It's such an important skill, and managing your own career is such an important skill. So you might be a student at the moment, and you start looking and you know that in a year's time you'll be finished, in 2 years' time you'll be finished. The question is then, are you going to be ready to go into the job market? And that is why career management, managing your career, starts while you're a student. It's to ask yourself, how do I best prepare myself to be a candidate that I can stand the best chance to be interviewed? I just want to interview. I don't want the job. I just want to get past the initial screening and to get an interview, because once I'm in the interview, I would get up to show the other person across the desk who I am and what I can do. Career management is something that it's a skill that you have to learn. And there's lots of resources online where you learn about your CV, to make sure that your CVs grabs and gets people's attention, networking and all of those things. And starting as an intern, doing some voluntary work, etc., just to bolster your CV to get those hours in. But you put your finger on it. You put your finger on why we hear so many heartbreaking stories of people with qualifications, with years of experience, and they're sitting at home and they can't secure a job. And once you get over that 3 months, once you get over 6 months, and once you get into 12 months of being unemployed, it is difficult to secure something after that, because that immediately you're immediately sort of excluded from a lot of applications, because this person has been at home for 12 months and we don't know why. We don't have time to check. We don't have time to call them. We don't have time to ask them why you've been at home for 12 months. That's why I would recommend anybody as a candidate, don't put down that you're unemployed. Just say you're a full-time student, or you're a part-time student, or you've been working as a volunteer. And you're going to work as a volunteer, even if you're just on somebody's books, on an NGO's books, as being, a person that comes in once a week and come and do a couple of 3 hours worth of work for free. But you're on their books, you can show them. I've been, for 6 months, I've been working as a volunteer at this and this NGO, even if it's just once a week for a couple of hours doing filing or doing some admin work for them. Yeah. Oof. Thank you very much, guys. There was some good questions, and it almost feels like you can stop there, because you put your finger on what HR is about, and I would encourage you to go into this, if you're going to go into this career path, to go into it with your eyes wide open, because it is out of all the functions in the organization, it is the one which, if the finance function is the head, if the operations function is the hands and the feet, and marketing is the mouth, then HR is the heart of the organization, because you're holding people's futures, their careers, their everything in your hands, and it is sometimes difficult for people to deal with it. The incidence of burnout in HR is much greater than in any other function in the organization. I'm going to end off with this, which is the whole Gen Z sort of generational thing. So I've included in your discussion for this week, and I'm really looking forward to see how you guys are going to approach it. I've asked AI to come up with a bit of a case study, and it wrote a case study, which is a very good one. And it sort of gives you a scenario, and it's asking you to come up with a job ad to recruit a specific type of person, recruit a specific person, which is in this case is a junior HR officer. So you're the HR manager and you're recruiting a junior HR officer, and I want you to then look at the video, have a look at the reading. So it's a Deloitte report. It's extensive. It's like 40 odd pages. Please don't read through everything. Use AI to summarize it for you. But there's one section specifically which is about how to recruit Gen Z, which is about understanding the trifecta. I'm not going to touch on that. Let me just ask them add a selection tools. Ethical. There we go. Which is that Gen Z is looking for specific things, which is about, is that nothing now? That principle. Okay. They're looking for specific things. They're looking for purpose. They're looking for an opportunity to learn. They're looking for a learn and grow in the organization. So let me talk about purpose. They want to know that their personal values and organization's values is aligned. Organization is not just there to make money. The organization has a greater purpose, a higher purpose. And so they're looking for that in the organization. So the discussion, or at least the reading and the Deloitte article report will give you a bit of breakdown on that. And I'm looking quite forward to reading through those job ads to see whether you've sort of put your finger on it to better, how do you best sort of appeal to a Gen Z. So that's the first part of it. But the second part of the discussion really is, does any of these generational terms, any of these generational generalizations, these stereotypes, do they really matter, or is it about the person? And do all Gen Zs fit into the same stereotype, or are they just that? They're just stereotypes. And do people are people individuals, and you need to see them outside of their generation, you need to see them as individuals. And that's really what I also want to see you sort of grapple with. Because we use these stereotypes, Gen Zs and millennials and Gen Xers and baby boomers, and we use them so freely to sort of clump people together and say, you're a Gen X, so you like this, and you're a Gen Z, you like this, you're millennial, you like this. And do they really mean anything, especially when it comes to selection and recruitment, especially when it comes to recruitment? How do we best communicate in order to get the right pool of people to make the right selection from that pool? So that's what I'm looking for. I'm not going to go through the rest of the presentation. You guys, I'll post this tomorrow when I upload the video, and you can have a look at it further. But essentially, we touched on this partnership between HR and line managers, having an effective selection process, the different types of interviews. You've got competency-based interviews, you've got technical interviews. There's a whole bunch of them. You go through the AMOS reading, the different tools for selecting. Again, if you go through the AMOS reading, they go quite detailed through it. And then the critical success factors for onboarding. So that's the final step. It's recruitment, selection, and then onboarding. Onboarding is also critical because once you have people within the organization, especially that critical 3 months, where both of you are sort of looking at each other and you're sort of sussing each other out and you're sort of checking each other out and you're wanting to find out, is this the right place for me, etc. Those are crucial times to make sure that you onboard the person in such a way that they know exactly not just where the toilets are, but knowing what the expectations are from them, understanding all of the rules of the road, so to speak, all of the policies that guide behavior. But most importantly, that first 3 months is about, I don't want to we used to call it brainwashing, but it's not really brainwashing. It is sort of bringing that person into the culture of the organization. This is how we do things around here. And a lot of that is through training. A lot of that is through showing and through doing, so that people can see, okay, so this is the culture. This is the values that guide us. These are the artifacts. These are the what is acceptable, and this is what is not acceptable. So that is what that onboarding process is so important. Yes, Andrew, final question.
So I was going to say, could you not say, instead of brainwashing, wouldn't it be
we used to call it that. We don't call it that any
longer. I know, but wouldn't a better term to be cultural and belief indoctrination of what the business has?
So not indoctrination, but definitely beliefs, values, which is essentially, it underpins the organizational culture, beliefs and values. And those things aren't written down, because organizational culture isn't stuff that's written down. You can't give them a book and say, yeah, read this. And once you've read it, you'll understand what the organization is all about. No, a lot of those things are things that sort of sit in between. It is the way people relate to each other. It is the artifacts. It's the way we do things. You know, every Friday, morning, it's expected that in the department somebody brings muffins, and we have a little coffee and muffin break on Friday afternoon. Friday afternoons we leave a bit earlier to allow for some people to observe some of their religious practices, and those things aren't written down. Those are just the things that those are the values, and so you've got the values that's on the wall. Those are organizational honesty, integrity, blah blah blah, and then there's the values that we practice. And those are more real than the values that's on the wall. How we live out those values, that is what counts. And those things are the things that are shown. Those are the things that are modeled by others. And that is why that onboarding is so important, that onboarding process, because you need to ensure that those people that's around that person models the right behavior, that they don't go after 3 months, but, oh, I know we start at 8, but I see everybody in my department sort of strolls in at 9 o'clock with a cafe latte. So I suppose I can also start at 9, You have to make sure that the people that model the behavior around that person is modeling the right behavior, rather than giving them a different impression. Excellent. Are there any other questions? Great stuff. Sure. This evening's was a interesting session, quite a deep session. I appreciate that. And I also have a sense that quite a few of you have grown a lot more closer to what this role truly entails. But don't let that scare you off. All you need to do is, when you do take on this role, if you're choosing this as a career path, you need to do it with your eyes wide open. Because it can be intense, but it can also be absolutely rewarding in terms of practically what it looks like in organizations. So good. Thank you very much for a good session, and yeah, have a good evening, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you. Bye.
Everybody,
Thank you,
yeah.
sir.
Bye.
Bye.